think for me, the biggest thing about being a producer is just making a song happen. And that's really the job, first and foremost. Is I'm here to help. And that could be a billion different things from scenario to scenario. In some situations, that means I'm pulling up 200 beats and one of them happens to be the one that clicks. In other scenarios, it might be conversation. It might be just talking to a person for 3-4 hours until something changes or something clicks, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, now let's make music. I think producers in general, all my favorite producers that I've been around are people who are gentle with the process, who kind of like will nudge and kind of softly shape a song and are very respectful of a song and letting it happen naturally. And then they're just good with people. They're just good at reading whether or not an artist even should be recording something today. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe they should take a walk. Maybe they should, like listen to their favorite album one time before even attempting at making something. Maybe, so it's for me, like the producing of the music, that's easy. Like anybody can, figure out how to make something sound good. But whether or not you inspire a song to actually happen and also charge a song with the type of energy that makes an artist want to release it after the fact, like that is like the art of a producer, I think. Because you can have an incredible song, and if the experience around it wasn't a cool experience, that's going to be jaded in the artist's mind and might not make them want to put it out even though it's incredible. So I think it's a lot of psychology. I think it's a lot of just being a human. Everybody that I work with, I tell the most important thing you can do as a producer is care. If you care, then you'll figure out what it is that needs care, and then it's going to be better, I think one of my more recent realizations about being a producer is how much being organized changes everything for me. Me feeling like I have control over my files, me feeling like everything is at my fingertips whenever I need it, is essential, both in terms of the stuff that I've made and in terms of my flow. I think having everything set up in a way where I don't need to plug in a cable, I don't need to wonder where something is or why something is not working or whatever's happening. When we're ready to make music, there shouldn't be a single thought other than what's the music. That flow, like being organized and being on top of my stuff, has really switched up my efficiency like heavily. So my absolute favorite way of creating music is from complete scratch. Every keyboard is on, everything is plugged in, everything is working, everything is recording, and whatever happens from here happens. Like that's the best way for me. But I'm also in a lot of situations where people are used to just pulling up beats and pulling up ideas and getting that initial like inspiration, that initial idea, that instinct at the beginning, when sometimes you hear a beat and then the beat just starts and you're like, oh, I already know this song and I'm just gonna sing the song, and it just comes. In scenarios like that, disco has been a huge help for me, where in disco I have absolutely all the music I've ever made in all different shapes. I have versions of it with only the drums in case I want to change chords on the spot. I have versions of my songs that are super slowed down, that might just be raw material for me to turn into something new. And then I have playlists on playlists with different feelings and different categories that I can pull from in a scenario where we don't want to be starting from scratch. Disco is fantastic in terms of like helping me stay organized and giving me certain keywords that I can follow. Like the auto tagging system, for example, will tell me, all right, cool, I know I'm looking for something with a guitar. Let me just see if there's anything with a guitar that speaks to me all of a sudden. Or I know I'm looking for something in this general range of tempo, I can just quickly look for that and see everything that is there. And also, like, one thing, I feel like there's two sides of like my use of disco. It's the going to a session, not knowing what the vibes are going to be. Very often I'll pull up to a session and they're looking for the complete opposite of what I thought. And in those scenarios, like, disco is a huge help, where it's like, all right, cool, we're actually looking for 80s type music today, and I just brought hip hop beats. Great, I know how to find that. Let me go in and the past few years, what I've really focused on is executive production. In the flow of executive production, which is basically just caring on an even deeper level than you're usually allowed to care. So it's like, you care about track lists, and you care about mastering, and you care about mixing engineers, and you care about track selection, and you care about topics and lyrics, and you kind of just like, you're invested across the board. And in those scenarios, a huge thing for me is flow between songs. So very often what I'll do in an album process, I'll have several versions of an album living in disco at the same time. One playlist that is constantly updating with the latest demos will have a different playlist that is just chaos of all the different songs, so that we might find some accidents here and there. And then we'll have another playlist that is the original thing that we thought in the very, very beginning, so that we remember what that was. And all of these playlists, I can monitor and see, oh, the artist is listening to the completely wrong like playlists. What does this mean? Do you like the old demos better, or did you just accidentally get the wrong link and then back on track? Or even just the ability to update in real time and be like, the artist lives with one thing, this is my album, and I know when I leave the studio, it's in there, and it's gonna be the latest versions of everything. Throughout that process, oh, let's try this as the intro, oh, let's try this as the outro, and even just living with it as a group of songs, like living with it as an album that's just like, I click this thing and then my album is in front of me. Like, that is also like an important feeling, because most people, will organize things in all sorts of like crazy ways where like the music is all over the place. And I think part of the job of being an executive producer is kind of staying clear of the vision and being like, all right, cool, we got all this stuff floating around, but here's the album and it's this playlist. I grew up in a town called, the closest real town to me is called Haugesund, which is like a kind of like a fishing village type town in Norway. Very peaceful, a lot of nature, a lot of farmland type of like surroundings in a pretty weathered country. Like Norway is generally pretty dramatic when it comes to weather, so you stay inside a lot and you get really good at whatever it is that you're nerding out on, whether that is video games or playing heavy metal guitar, or if it's knitting or whatever it is. Like the winter months is like a very good like nerdy period of time in Norway. So I spent a lot of time inside, just kind of, it's a storm outside, but I'm making beats and it's all good. I always knew that I was going to do music in some sort of capacity, but I think the medium has changed quite a bit. Like, when I was 6 years old, I was confident I was going to be a gospel drummer. When I was 11, I was like, oh, maybe I want to be a pop star, actually. And then at, like 19, I was like, you know what, maybe I want to be a producer instead. And then it's kind of just like evolved from like thing to thing throughout my life. But I wanted to be an archaeologist for about 3 months when I was 7. And that's the only other thing outside of music that I've ever like thought about doing. So yeah, kind of just always been music for me. My story is such a windy and weird one. I got into music before I realized I was into music. My dad is really the one that like put me on. One of my earliest memories is I'm at some sort of concert and this drummer sees me with drumsticks in my hands, like in the front row. I'm probably 2 or 3 at this point. He like waves me up and like brings me and like puts me on his lap and plays a song like through my hands, like at the concert. And that's like one of the very first things that I remember at all. I think that kicked me into consciousness pretty much. And at that point I was like, oh, I'm in this. I want this feeling again. Yeah. From like 3 to 10 maybe, I was really, I think I was playing drums probably 7-8 hours a day. I was quite obsessive about it. So it's weird. Like now I'm rusty. Now I'm not great at all. But like around like 11, 12, I was really good. It's helped me a lot in the way that I write in general. Like even now I can look at, you know, a harmony the same way that I look at a snare drum, and I know that that needs to hit in that same pocket, and it's informed my timing a lot, and it's informed my feel a lot. So I'm like, yeah, I always recommend to everybody start off with drums. If drums is your entry point, then everything else is feels natural after the fact. And the coolest thing about drums maybe is the fact that as a kid, you can be a part of very complex music without understanding the math. You know, you can kind of just play along to shit that is way, way, way more advanced than what your knowledge of scales and harmony and technique and all that stuff that you need for other instruments. And you can still be a part of it and listen to it actively. So I think it was like, not only was it like a cool way to like get into music, but also a good way to educate myself on listening to really good music without being scared of the math. You know what I mean? It's very quick to be like, oh, I don't understand all these scales. I don't know I can't get the technique on the violin right, so it sounds terrible every time I practice. Drums is kind of a cheat code. Like, it feels good and I can listen to stuff at the same time. So that's my background. I'm really a drummer at heart, and then I put all of that same time that I put into drums, I put it right back into production instead. And I don't think I really understood that I was producing at the time, but I was making beats, these abstract, bizarre beats, basically. And then kind of out of necessity, I started singing on those beats. I grew up in like a very isolated little town on the coast of Norway. So there was nobody else to sing on my beats. So I was just like, I gotta figure this out. And yeah, and then just from there, it's taken a lot of twists and turns, and I've had a lot of different projects, and the production part is what has like really stuck and like has become the my biggest love within music right now. Yeah, I remember like one of the very first cuts that I had was like an Ariana Grande song, and I think that was like before I had even like really started coming out to the US properly. And it happened via some collaborators of mine, and I remember like when that actually came out, and I was like, oh wait, like my name is like in the credits, like I'm fully a part of this. That was definitely like a pivotal moment for me. I remember the first time Chance got on a beat of mine, and I remember getting the MP3 and listening to it in a hotel room in San Francisco with my girlfriend at the time, and being like, wow, like this is my favorite rapper right now. I can't believe he's on something that I made. That was definitely like a huge moment for me. A lot of those like memorable moments are in the studio, are making things that I didn't realize I could make, discovering chords, discovering sounds, discovering feelings in a studio, together with an artist, or realizing, oh, we just made it click, and now the song is just happening automatically. Like those moments are probably the ones that like are like the deepest for me. But yeah, it's cool to be on the radio too, though, for sure.